Hey everyone, my name is Tyler Mowry, and welcome to episode 7 of the Writer's Mind podcast. Okay, here we are again. Today, I want to talk about confidence and seeking certainty. So this is something that I feel not only in writing, but in a lot of areas of life where when you are starting something new, or if you're in the process of working on something, it's very easy to get into this freezing mode where you are worried about what to do, not even right now, but worried about what to do 10 steps ahead, right? So a lot of times with screenplays, you can get into this where you want to have everything completely figured out before you take action. Or in the even larger part of that, if you want to be a professional writer, if you want to write screenplays and, get them sold and get them made, you want to have that completely planned out before you take one step. And a lot of times when we don't have that security of what we're going to be doing, step 10 and forward, we start freaking out and, we're stressed about that. We have anxiety about what's going to be in the future. And that makes sense. Obviously we want to have an idea of where we're going and how things are going to work out. And so because of that, we should plan to the best of our abilities and have a working understanding of where we're trying to get and what the steps are going to be generally to get us there. But the problem is we get too specific in the plan, or we try to have a complete, 100% certain plan in front of us before we actually start taking any real action. And this is a super harmful way to go after your goals or go after any sort of big project. Because what happens is when you try to plan out every single thing, what's going to happen is you're going to realize that you can't plan out every single thing. And so then you're going to get frozen, and then you're going to take no action because you couldn't figure out the best way to perfectly move forward. And what I see a lot of the time is I see screenwriters or people trying to write, their first screenplay. And a lot of the time they get to the outlining phase. They have their idea, they get to the outlining phase, and they're like, okay, I'm going to get this outline perfect. And this is something that I've done again and again. They outline and outline and outline and outline, and they have a scene by scene outline, and they know that, in the past they've tried to write 15 pages and somehow their outline's not working, so they re-outline, and they want to make sure that the first draft of their actual screenplay, the first draft that they write, is going to be perfect. It's not going to have any mistakes, or it's going to be easy little polishes. They're going to love the entire process. They're going to love it the whole time. Everything's going to be perfect. This just isn't how not even writing works, but just how going after a goal works. This is just not reality. It's not how things work. When you are in some sort of task, specifically writing a screenplay for us, you are wanting to have everything perfect, but what's going to happen is there will be things that you're going to have to adjust over time. You are never, ever, ever going to have a full understanding of what should be done next, how things should go forward. And I think that when you really look at how life works and you really look at how accomplishing a goal works, whether that's a multi-year goal or, a few months, or what happens is you realize that you have to be constantly adjusting. You have the larger goal and then you're adjusting your smaller goals over time, right? So if your goal is to finish a screenplay, for example, you have the goal of finishing this, you write this outline, you're like, great, I'm going to write this first draft, it's going to be perfect. You write that first draft, or you get 30 pages into that first draft and you realize this is not working, something's wrong. So you can either go back to re-outline or you can keep pushing forward. And eventually, let's say you get to that first draft, but you don't like this first draft. It's not what you wanted. And you're like, okay, I have to go back and rewrite. I have to go back and figure out what's not working. And so then you go through that process. You go through the rewriting process. And then you realize that, oh, it's not just these certain things, but I have to change my view on writing. I have to change how I'm viewing building the skill set of writing. And then that all is a piece of the long-term goal, which is, becoming a professional screenwriter, selling your work for money and getting it in front of other people. And so that is simply the process that you have to go through, right? I think if you think about it, if you've ever played, video games, a lot of the time you don't necessarily know. You know that if you're playing like a linear video game, you know that at the end of this game there is the final boss, the final goal, whatever you're trying to do in this game, and then over time you are fighting through stages and upgrading your skill set, right? Your like skill tree, depending on what you're playing, and you're learning new moves and you're fighting harder enemies and you're getting an understanding of how you're supposed to play this game, right? The video games are based upon our reality, right? What's interesting is if you really break down a video game, human beings, we like work. We like to be doing something. We like to be going after something. And all that video games do is replicate that process, right? A fun video game is a video game that is giving us tasks that are not tedious for long-term goals that we want, right? That's really what the entire thing comes down to, is that idea, right? You enjoy fighting the stage 2 and 3 minions or small bosses, and you enjoy going on, these little quests. And you also know that as you go forward, you're going to be better at this game. You're going to eventually be against enemies that are the final enemies, and you're going to beat the game, and you're going to be happy that you beat this game. And so that is all just simply modeled on real life, in the sense that the difference, what's interesting is the difference is in a video game, we just know that we can get to the end. We know that it takes time to go through this process, and it takes time to improve your skill set in a particular video game. But then suddenly we get into life and we say, oh, there's no way we can do whatever this thing is, even though people have done it before us, even though people have figured it out, even though people that have made all sorts of mistakes have ended up where they wanted to be. We say, oh, well, it's not possible for us to get to where we want to go. So we will either, just do nothing, or we have to do everything completely right in every moment, in every case, in every situation, or there's no way that we're going to get to where we want to go. And I really think that, in a way, viewing a lot of the improvements you want to make in your life, and particularly in your writing, you should view it like a video game in that sense. You kind of have an understanding of, okay, there are stages to my growth here, right? And certain stages may take me longer, and certain stages may be filled with more mistakes. But as long as I am pushing forward continually, I'm making progress. And that's really what you have to understand, right? When if you are casually playing a particular video game, your goal is not to, run through that entire game perfectly. Your goal is to play the game and slowly improve, right? What's interesting is you can even think about this, like the analogy really holds up because, certain people will go through different challenges, or they'll do different, runs of a game. People do speed runs of a game, or people do, perfect runs of a game where they take no damage or do every single thing right, make all the right decisions, never get hurt, never die, whatever, right? But they're only able to do these things. You're only able to speed run a game or do a perfect run on a game. You're only able to do that after you have played that game multiple times, right? It is extremely rare, if not, totally impossible, to play certain games and for the first time you have ever once played this game, to do it completely perfectly and, not be surprised by anything, not be hurt, not be damaged, not die, whatever. And so the same thing applies to your career, your goal as a person who is trying to write screenplays and also improve your thinking so that you can, write impactful screenplays. These things take time. And, what's interesting, even, to look at another analogy is if you think about lottery winners, right? You have a lot of times people who win the lottery are either middle class or low middle class, and then they win and they get millions and millions and millions of dollars. And we've all heard stories about how a lot of lottery winners end up losing their money very quickly. And you think, how in the world do you lose $50 million? Or how in the world do you lose $100 million? And the reason for this is because they did not have any sort of financial skills, right? They never had to deal with, they never were ever dealing with having $50,000, at a single time. And so they never even learned how to manage, a small piece of money like, $50,000, which is, more than the average person is having, but not like a massive, massive amount of money. They never learned how to do that. And so then suddenly they're dropped in the final boss battle, right? And then they fail. They blow through it. They don't understand how to take care of it. And so this is why I think for you as a writer, not only in your writing, but in other areas of your life, I think it's important to be grateful and to be aware of the fact that whatever stage you're in your writing is important. And people like to zoom through certain things, but it really is important to be in the stage you're in and learn the lessons in that particular stage of your career that you're in so that you can then handle the next stage and the next stage and the next stage without blundering it. Because what you don't want to do is hyper speed your way through things and then suddenly you get to, you're way ahead, but in reality you don't have the skill set to handle that level of problems or that level of skill. So then you're going to fall to pieces, right? This is why people who, they want to get rich and then they get rich very slowly end up having a better understanding of their finances and have a much better ability to manage large sums of money because they have gone through the different stages. If you're a business owner or if you're in real estate or whatever, you slowly are building and then you have an understanding of, okay, here's kind of how I manage having $10,000. Here's how I manage having $100,000. Here's how I manage having $1 million and $10 million. And then suddenly it's a lot easier for you to manage larger sums of money. And so, I think what you do is you create your reality through consistent effort, right? Not through being perfect, not through understanding exactly what you should do. You create your world, you create your career, you create the situation you want to be in by slow, consistent effort. And it is better to make mistakes very quickly than to worry about never making mistakes. Because when you can make mistakes quickly, you can learn the lessons from making those mistakes quickly. And then you can, apply them to what you're doing next and move faster. So I would almost encourage writers to, so if you're somebody who's obsessing over their outline, for example, just say, okay, whatever, this is the outline, let me write this screenplay. And you're going to write the screenplay and you're going to be frustrated because it's not perfect. But what you should be is grateful that you have made significant progress, because now you're not just somebody with an outline, you are somebody who has completed a draft of a screenplay, which surprisingly is not most people who want to be writers. It's very interesting, if you put all the people, let's say just people who are subscribed to my channel or even people who listen to this podcast, if you put them all in a room and you said, raise your hand if you have written to page 90 on one screenplay, even if it's terrible, even if it's, a really bad draft that you hate, just gotten to that point, I think you would be very surprised with how few people have done that. Maybe it really could be less than 5%. I hope not. I would like for that to be more like 10% or 20%. But it is really low. It's a lot lower than you would think. And so I think that you can view that as a starting point to say, okay, this is something that I learn in stages. Therefore, I'm going to just write this thing and get it out and then go from there, right? So improvement, knowing what to do, does not come from trying to find out what the best thing to do is every time and make perfect moves. Knowing what to do comes from doing things and messing up and being like, oh, I should do this. And then what happens is people feel so angry at themselves. This is what I do and what I have done and the mindset that I had to shift out of, even though it still is with me sometimes, which is, people feel angry at themselves for making mistakes. I say, I'm such an idiot. How did I not see that this was the correct thing to do? Whereas the better mindset is, oh, okay, so here's the mistake I made. Here's what I can learn from it. Great. Now I know that I won't make that mistake again, or I know how to fix this if I make that mistake again because I've learned my lesson here. I know how to move forward. That's the better way to handle this. And this also goes to this idea of developing your mind and developing your skill set as a critical thinker and as somebody who is trying to write, not only write well, but write in a way that is impactful and meaningful is, if you have never been like a strong reader, and you're like, I wish I could get through all these books, but I just can't. Just starting is going to be so much better for you than saying, okay, from now on I read a book a week or something. It's like, well, you have to work up to that. You can't just do that. Read something every day. Read a few pages, read a chapter, read 5 pages, do something. And that gets you started. And then you can build from there. And I think that one thing that I've also noticed is you really have to, when you're building habits, especially when you're building habits around the goals that you want to go for, like the goals that you want to hit, you really have to focus on one of them, get it working, and then move to another, right? A lot of times people try to do every single element of their thing at the same time, meaning, like if you are trying to become a professional screenwriter, people try to do a ton of networking and try to meet as many people as possible. And they also try to, write a screenplay that is super, like, extremely well written. And they also try to understand, like, how do you market a screenplay? What is the best way to market a screenplay? And they also, are, consistently trying to read and understand more about writing and the story fundamentals and story theory. And so what happens is they are scattered and they don't get anything done because they're trying to do all these different things. Whereas I think it's a lot better for you to say, okay, step 1, let me figure out how to get a story out onto the page consistently. Every time I need to get a story out onto the page. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be marketable. I don't have to have 17 connections to, top film producers. Let me focus on getting a story out. Okay, great. Now, when you can nail that, fantastic. Now, let's talk about writing well. Let's talk about writing a story that's actually good. Okay? So now we're working on that. So now we're working on rewriting. Now we're working on understanding what are the correct components of a story. Now we're working on knowing what to fix and how to fix it. And then you say, okay, now I have this skill set of this. Now I can start to say, okay, let me start to improve on my understanding of the world, understanding of philosophy, understanding of psychology, so that I can then apply these things and form my own opinions on them, so that I can then apply them to my story and have something that is not only well written, but also meaningful, right? And then it's like, okay, now I have done so much work involved in becoming a good writer, legitimately a good writer. Now let's go and talk about, okay, let's talk about what does, correct networking look like? How do I actually network? How do I be valuable to other people? How do I, navigate an industry, right? So these are different elements of the long-term skill set and goal, which is become a great professional writer, right? And so it's really, and a lot of these things, I feel like you really need to expand your time horizon. And you need to say, okay, I don't know how to go all the way over here, but I know that right now these are the things I should be working on. And then when you do those, the next steps of the path kind of reveal themselves to you, right? And that's what it, just like going through the stages of a video game, that you begin to understand, okay, I have no idea how I would beat this level 5 boss, but I'm fighting this level 1 boss right now and I just beat him. Okay. So now I can see how I'm going to come into this level 2 boss and fight him, but I have no idea how I'm going to fight this big guy later, right? But you don't have to know right now. You don't have to know right now. You can, you grow through starting. That's just what it is. You grow through starting and you go to the next and you grow, and you go to the next thing and you grow. And if you try to skip those stages, it's not going to work. You have to understand these stages. You know what's interesting is, especially with screenwriting, what I see a lot of the time is you see a lot of writers who got great at networking, got great at marketing, and even got great at finishing a story, and never got good at the actual writing part, right? So, I've read scripts all the time where it's this writer has an agent, this writer has written multiple screenplays, this writer has sold screenplays. They know how to market, they know how to navigate an industry, they know the person who knows the person who knows the person. And then you read their script and it's like, this is not good. And then you're like, oh, well, it's marketable, so I guess it could be bought and then sold because of its marketability, and that's fine and great. But then at some point, you have to ask yourself, okay, well, does this person ever want to write something that's great or meaningful? If they don't want to, then that's, totally up to them. That's not necessarily what I would like to do. But I think that you have to, it's about knowing what you need to be working on right now. That's really what it comes down to. It's about planning out enough to where you know what you need to be working on right now and having the long-term goal of where you want to go. And what you don't want to do is end up in a situation where you have undeveloped elements of your skill set that are going to harm you in the long run. If you can market like crazy and you can finish bad stories and get them sold, that's fantastic. Like, great. You're way ahead of most writers, but you're also not writing well. And so that's a skill set you need to go back and spend some time on. If you are the rare person who is writing fantastic screenplays, but is terrible at marketing and networking, okay, you need to do some marketing and networking. You need to move to a place where you are surrounded by people within the industry. You need to, work for people in the industry. Get jobs where you're going to be adjacent to people who are willing to help you and willing to read and are looking for fantastic stories. That is probably 0.001% of the writing population, because almost nobody wants to work on writing fantastic stories, and everybody wants to work on knowing the producer who has the financing to get a story made or a movie made, And so, or you could be somebody who has great ideas and knows a ton of people in the industry, but they can't seem to get past page 20 and they give up every time on their screenplays. That's so many people in Los Angeles. So many people are walking around here with like ideas on like this fantastic story that's going to blow you away, that they have this great 15 pages written and they don't have anything else. And it's like, hey, you got to write it at some point. But their fear or their perfectionism or whatever is holding them back, and they would prefer to live in this fairy tale of, oh, I have this beautiful, perfect idea, rather than have that idea be brought in reality and they realize, oh, it's not so perfect. I have an undeveloped part of my skill set, which is the writing part. So, that's what you have to. Don't get discouraged because you're not perfect don't get discouraged because you're not perfect, right? Accept the fact that this takes time, and don't beat yourself up because you wrote something that wasn't perfect. I've literally never written a single thing perfect ever, one time ever. There was a phrase, I forget who said it, but I'm pretty sure it was a writer. They said that screenplays are not finished, they're just abandoned. Eventually you're just like, okay, well, I guess this is what it'll be. We'll send it off. Maybe it'll get made. Yeah. I think there really is some truth to that, where there's always something that can be fixed. Your job is to bring it to 90%, be satisfied with it enough, and then continue moving on. And I think we need that 10% always. For most of us, it's more like 40% or 60% that could be fixed. But, at the heights of writing, people who are 30 or 40 years into their career, for example, they still need that 10%. That 10% keeps us moving. It keeps us growing. I think we're chasing this idea of eventually we'll get into that perfect situation and we'll never have a single problem about writing ever again. But then I think that's boring. I think we like the struggle of it. We like to be unsure. I think we really do. We like to wonder what's going to happen next. We like to get frustrated and have to fix problems. That is what a video game is. Getting frustrated at this boss and figuring out how to fight them so that you can fight the next one. That's part of life, and it is absolutely part of writing. So I hope that's beneficial for you. If you are stuck on a stage, whatever that stage may be, I know for most people who are into writing, it's the finishing the script part. If you're in that stage, understand that your story isn't going to be perfect. Understand that it's going to take you some time to get it written, and then you're going to have to rewrite, and you're going to be building your skill set. So, if you are one of those people, then, my course is a great place to start. That's literally why I built it, because so many people struggle to get their script written. That's the point of the course, is to help you do that. So, definitely going to plug that because I think it's helpful. So hopefully that's helpful for you. I really think it's about just being confident in the fact that later on you're going to figure it out. Things are going to be confusing now, but just keep chipping away at it. And over time, things start to kind of align and things start to be clearer and they start to make a lot more sense. So I hope that's beneficial for you. If you'd like to listen to the episode 8, it is available right now on the Patreon. First link in the description. And I'll see you guys next Friday.